Hey guys, this is John Scarborough. This is about June the 20th, I think, right now, and it's about 100, probably about 95 degrees outside right now. It's really hot. Been riding around on this little four-wheeler coming around and checking all the cows out here. But under here, under this little canopy we've got out in here, we're right here next to the creek, little, very small creek. Runs right through the length of the property. Okay, right down the middle of it, pretty much. Anyway, right, we got this little canopy in here, and I want to say it's probably, just judging by how it feels, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 70 degrees, possibly even a little bit cooler under here. Okay, so that's like 25 to 30 degrees cooler underneath this little spot here. And these cows, of course, they love it here, because this is probably, outside of being in the pond, this is probably the coolest place on this whole little 20-acre patch here. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about real briefly here is kind of the differences, some of the differences of mob grazing versus rotational grazing when it comes to your rest areas for your cattle. Okay, because there's several main places that cattle will put their manure and urine in, and that's going to be around their water point. Okay, that's one, and then it's going to be around their mineral trough, and that's two, and that's why I like to separate those two and not have them together. Okay, and then three is going to be their rest area, especially in the summertime. Now in the wintertime it's not going to be quite as much of that, but in the summertime they're going to find a very cool, comfortable place to be, and they're going to spend quite a bit of time in that rest area. Okay, so that area is going to get a lot of manure and urine. Okay, so when you especially when you just graze all year round and you just put your cows in the same spot and never ever move them, there's going to be one spot that's their favorite spot, maybe two or three, and they're going to put the majority of their nutrients is going to go back into that spot. And it's usually a spot like this that's shaded, or in a pond where you're not really doing a whole lot of service for yourself, because you're putting a bacteria into something that feeds on a fungal environment. Okay, trees prefer a fungal, they're more of a fungal environment, and so too much manure and urine can actually be bad for them. But that's not the main point. The main point is that manure is going to do a whole lot better out on your pastures, because grass thrive on a bacterial. It's a bacterial thriving plant. Okay, whereas this right here, this tree, is a fungal thriving plant. Okay, so you're getting all this manure and urine and all this stuff, all of this stuff that you're pulling off of your land, you're replacing it somewhere where you're not utilizing it nearly as well. Okay, so what my point is about the rotational grazing versus the mob grazing. Okay, we all know that any type of movement is better than no movement at all. Okay, continuous grazing, we all know it's not good for the land, it's not good for your soil, and it's not good for your checkbook, to be real honest. I'm gonna just come out and say that. Okay, everybody says they don't have time for it. Okay, you should at least have time to set up one wire and move your cows. Just move them back and forth. Just move, I mean, at least do that. Move them from one side to the other. If that's all you can do, that's better than nothing at all. Even if you do overgraze your pastures, give it some time to recover. Okay, that's the first step. Because I mean, I understand we are all busy, we all have busy lives. Right now, me and my wife, we haven't even been posting on YouTube nearly as much because we're building a house and a shop right now. We just bought this land that we're actually standing on right now. It's about 23 acres. We just bought it, and now we're building a house and a shop here. Okay, so I understand being really busy. Okay, and that's one reason why I wanted to talk about this video, because right now we're not mob grazing. We're actually just utilizing a rotational grazing system. Now we're very fortunate because this land that we're buying here, we've already leased before, and now we're buying it, or we bought it, and the land directly across from here, directly across the road, we're leasing. Altogether, it's probably around 90 acres. I haven't looked at it for sure. For this group of cows, it's about 90 acres, and we got some more in other places. Okay, but the point is that we got very fortunate, and we got a place. We were able to lease a place that's connected to this land, and the place that we leased has multiple pastures set up. And RCS helped the previous owner out, and they've got multiple pastures set up out there, and it's a very good, well, a pretty good rotational system. And you can run your cattle just on that right there. So we're actually fortunate in that. In some ways, I don't like it that there's all those permanent fences put up, because it kind of takes away your flexibility. But in some ways, I do really like it, just simply because when you get really busy, sometimes you can fall back on utilizing that and not moving them every single day, okay? But the main thing is right now we're actually moving them faster because the grass is growing fairly fast. Even though it's really hot, it's actually, we're getting a decent amount of rainfall right now. So the grass is growing excellent. So when that happens, you want to speed your cattle up and speed that movement up. Get them moving faster and faster, and keeping the tips off of the grass, okay? Keeping it from getting mature, all right? So that's what we're doing right now. We've actually broke this piece of property up in two, all right? We put a line right down the middle of it, and we got it broke up, probably about 12 acres on this side, and 12 to, well, I'm not sure what's on the other side, but I just have to, anyway, I'm not even sure if it's 12 acres. We put a line kind of almost central, but not quite. But anyway, the point is that right now we're in a rotational grazing system instead of a mob grazing system, all right? So what is my point about the mob grazing and the rotational grazing? Well, it's this right here, okay? You see all this manure everywhere, okay? We've got manure spread out, and it's not all from today, okay? These cows have been in here probably 2 days, and they'll end up being in this place. Looking at the grass, it's probably going to be another 2 days before they get out. So this is their favorite spot. It would be my favorite spot, okay? That's a decent manure path there, okay? So it's their favorite spot because it's so cool. So throughout the entire duration of the 4 days, they're going to spend the majority of that time right here on this spot, okay? Depositing all of their manure and urine, okay? So in a rotational grazing system, I could do one of two things. I could either live with it, or I could run a hot wire around this little spot and cut them out of here, even though I'm not mob grazing, cut them out of here after they've been in here for a day or two, okay? I don't have a lot of time for that, nor do I have the infrastructure built on this place for that just yet, okay? So 4 days is not gonna kill the ground, and it's not gonna hurt anything. The point is that with the mob grazing, you only have, the cattle are only there for a day at the most. Sometimes I've even moved my cows up to 3 times a day, okay? So when you do that, they're not in one spot very often, okay? So if you can learn how to separate that, you separate their water and you separate their mineral and their rest area, their favorite place to be, okay? If you can separate all 3 of those, then you're distributing your manure in much better ways. Like, you're moving it along, you're not just getting it in one spot, okay? And a lot of times I do put my water and my mineral, I don't put it in the shade, okay? Because they're not going to be at the water or the mineral all day long, okay? But if you put the water or the mineral directly in a really comfortable spot, now they're definitely going to stay right there no matter what, okay? You want to get these cattle to spread out as much as they can, because that's how nature cleans itself, okay? So I'm going to show you a quick diagram, if I can draw this in the dirt here, down here in this little sand spot. I'm going to try to show you a little bit about what this land looks like here, if I can spread this out. So if I can show you this to help you to understand what I'm kind of trying to say. Okay, so there's this land right here. It's a fairly rectangle piece of property. We come in from over here, okay? So if I could do a nice mob grazing system, then I would be, the creek actually runs across like this, okay? Right down the middle. It's really handy. All right, but I would run that fence like this right here, okay? And they would probably rest around the creek just like they're doing here. But this right here would make it to where they're only in this spot of the creek for 1 day, this spot for 1 day, this spot for 1, and just all the way down the whole line. Okay, you see the point? That way they're not in one spot, because right now this is the best, most comfortable spot of the whole creek is going to be right here. So they're not going to sit there and move along that creek going that way. you know, what they're going to do is they're going to just stay right here. They're going to keep on coming back here, and they'll get up and they'll go graze, but they keep coming back here. So the majority of their manure and urine is ending up right here, and it's not helping me, all right? And it's not helping the cattle either, okay? Because that's a buildup of bacteria, it's a buildup of all kinds of things. Now, like I said, 4 days, they're not getting a disease, they're not exposed to this too much. It's not that big of a deal as far as that goes, but it's not gonna, you're not gonna get the maximum benefit that you could if you were able to spread your manure out better. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to cover real quick. I didn't want to drag the video out too long, but the differences in rotational grazing and mob grazing, they both have their place. I do pick up my speed with my cattle quite a bit when the grass is growing, and then when the grass slows down, then I slow my cattle down, okay? And you want to do that, okay? So I utilize that rotational grazing system, and sometimes when I get, and I got a lot to do, I'm not quite, you know, I got a little bit too much to do because the cattle aren't my only source of income right now, then I kind of utilize, I fall back on that rotational system a little bit, okay? But I wanted to do this video to help y'all understand the reasons why we do so much work in putting in, trying to do some mob grazing, okay? Because I've had a lot of questions asking like, well, if you've got a good rotational system, why are you worried about doing any kind of mobbing at all? Why go that extra mile? Why do the extra work when you still do other stuff for a living? You still work, you know, you still have to put in a lot of work in other places. Why fool with that? Well, it's because of this right here. It's because of what I'm trying to talk about, okay? Over the long haul, the mob grazing is going to be better, okay? It's the best thing you can possibly do because the cattle, all the different types of cattle, the different types of buffalo, and any type of cattle that there were that grazed in herds, okay, or mobs, okay, back in the day, back before we started farming these animals, they never stayed in one spot for more than 1 day, okay? And in fact, technically speaking, they really didn't stay in one spot for very long at all because they would just be a continual, gradual movement, okay? So just keep that in mind. Like, it's not, you're not killing anything by leaving them out here for a couple of days, leaving them in one spot, as long as they got plenty of food and as long as you give the place adequate rest. All right. But if you can, some mob grazing, even if it's just every now and then, even if it's just when the grass slows down, doesn't have to be all year necessarily, can be very beneficial for you and the cattle. So thanks, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy these types of videos. I try to bring educational videos about farming and about making a living at home the best I can. So thanks, everybody.